Hello! Welcome to another episode of That's So Bizarre! I'm your host, hippie gypsy pirate, Becky Porshow, and I'm here with Armand Rosamilia for another segment. We're talking about the paranormal and ghosts and what it all means. So here he is. Okay. There's Armand.
It's nice meeting you again.
It's nice to meet you too. Wonderful. Yes, charmed. All right, we're gonna scoot this around. Okay, so all right, so we talked about you living in this really freaky, crazy haunted house that kills people.
Yes.
Were you writing horror stuff prior to that, or was this
Actually, no, that was during a period I had just gotten divorced, and I was doing band stuff. So like I was working a full-time job, and I was weekends and stuff. I was traveling and managing a band. So pretty much music was everything. But then I hadn't written anything in probably a couple of years at that point.
Okay.
So, and I didn't write anything until about a year or so after. And then when I started writing stuff, especially horror stuff, at that point it was, maybe not writing about that specific, but a lot of those feelings and everything. And to this day, I still, when I'm writing a scene that's, like when I said when I wrote Keepword Cthulhu, the dread of being in that house and everything, really came through. And
fuels it.
And what's cool is people that knew me back then that have read the book and knew that story and everything, they were like, it's not that story, but it's that type of weird. Because it was very, for me, it was very like that H.P. Lovecraft that I had read as a kid. I mean, that was what it was. Because you can imagine yourself in this house that's, 100, 150 years old, whatever it was at the time. And it looked like it. I mean, it was this big, gaudy, ornate house. I mean, everything in the house was wooden. I mean, old wooden floors and high ceilings and everything.
So when you say these feelings, I mean, I hear a lot of people say that. Like they get how is it different? Because I personally don't really know if I get those weird feelings. What is it? What does it feel like?
So I mean, it's hard to say it without it feeling like a cliche, like a sense of dread, or the hair rose on the back of my neck kind of things. But it's true. I mean, it's just. I'm sure if I went back there today and even just drove on the block and looked at the house, I would be uncomfortable. I think that's what it is more than anything. It's just being uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable when I lived in the house. The entire time I lived in the house, I was uncomfortable. And then all those things that happened really freaked me out.
Huh. And so you do get like a sense of, like, some people talk about nausea or they get the goosebumps.
It was a lot of goosebump moments. I mean, I didn't feel like I was sick or anything. It wasn't like I felt like I was threatened, like I thought the demon was going to come out of the fireplace or anything. But it just felt like I would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and feel like I was being watched or uneasy feelings and stuff. And I would just chalk it down to I was going through a separation. I was getting a divorce then and all that. And it was during that part of my life where I was working a dead end job and I was going nowhere. I hadn't written in a long time, and that was always been my dream to be a writer. And I hadn't done that in a long time, and I pushed everything safe out of the way. And I was drinking a lot, and I was like drinking by myself. There's this night that my friends will still goof on me about. It was like raining down. It was like pouring rain. We're having a thunderstorm, lightning, the whole thing. And I had all the blinds up. And again, these windows are like, the ceilings were like, in the one main room was like 20 feet.
Oh my gosh.
And
so it's like a reception room.
The bay window was like, I think it was like 12 feet in length. And there was like three of them. So it was like a 20-foot long room with windows and that big. So, and I have all the blinds pulled all the way up, and it's lightning, it's thunder, it's pouring, and I got Bruce Springsteen on, and I got a bottle of Jack Daniels or something. And I'm just like crying and looking out the window and drinking, and I'm like this total mess, and so and I was just at that point I look back of everything was going on, but then years later you look back and you go, well, did that add to it? Like you see these movies, Poltergeist or Amityville Horror or something like that, and you look and you go, why is Dad acting like that? And I'm like, wait a minute, I acted like that. Like emotionally, I don't know why I was so over the top with because it had been a while since we'd broken up. I knew we were getting divorced. I mean, so it wasn't like I was still pining away for her or anything else. It was really, it was just really not me.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I mean, I'm an emotional person.
Uh-huh.
But that was just like completely crazy, even in my 20s.
Right. So, what would you say if someone said, "Oh, it's just your imagination. It was just the pipes banging, or it was just coincidence"?
I mean, like I watch all the ghost shows, and I watched all that stuff, and I would always say, "Oh, it was that, or it was this," and you see all the pictures of the orbs, and you go, "Okay, that's dust." I mean, all that stuff. It's easy when you're not in it to look and go, "Oh, that didn't really happen." And they're, for the cameras, or people tell you stories about what happened, and you go, "Whatever, your grandmother did not talk to you," like that. I'm very dismissive with stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, there was a girl here in town in Flagler Beach who said she had a hungry ghost that hung out with her and stuff. I mean, I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any of that.
She might have been fiction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but then when you live it, it's like freaky. Right. When I was a little kid, and my Mima and Pipa, I was at their house, and again, it's in Newark, New Jersey. Mima and Pipa, that's the Italian. My Pipa look like Al Capone. I mean, it's my dad's dad, exactly. But anyway, there's steps that lead down into their basement. I was always freaked as a kid going in their basement. I guess I have a thing for basements. Yeah. And I remember as being like a 4 or 5 year old kid looking down the basement, and we had brought a brown paper bag with my stuff in it, and it was a guy. It was the face of, there was a brown paper bag, and it was somebody staring. I'm getting chills now. At the bottom of the stairs, just looking up at me, and I freaked out. And I remember people was in the bathroom shaving, and I ran in there crying and screaming and everything. And he grabbed me by the arm and took me over there, and then the bag was just sitting off to the side. Yeah. And like I still remember, I could still picture that in my head, as weird as it sounds. But it was real. But it was real to me.
It wasn't like the whole clouds and the sky thing.
No, I mean it was just a person with a bag over his face, standing there looking at me, and it like freaked me. So like as a kid, I went through that, but then I was also like, I dismiss everybody else's.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I have the same thing where I've got my own personal stories that I'm like, no, that was weird, But then, I'm a skeptic. I mean, I love this stuff, and I think that's probably why I do this, is because I love hearing these stories. It's from people who like have no reason to lie. Right. You're not lying, right?
All right, I'm lying.
All right. Well, so tell me a little bit about your writing and how that fits in. A little more about how that fits into the paranormal.
Well, I write horror, but I don't just write horror. I mean, I write thrillers, and I've written pretty much anything under the sun at this point. Right. I've been very blessed with being able to get paid for everything that I've been writing. I've been writing full time for 3 or 4 years now. But again, a lot of that, a lot of the horror elements and stuff is from my own personal experience, and it's not necessarily maybe the horror. Right. But I always joke around. I always use the cliche that I've killed my ex-wives a million times in my stories. Right. But to an extent, it's true. Right. Because I can still channel the feelings I had in certain people. You get me mad, or I have the greatest time with you, whatever that is. That goes into a story, into a book, and not necessarily horror. Right. Like when I did the Flagler Beach fiction series, I mean, it's all set in town, and a lot of those characters in there are real people. Really? But just
am I one of them?
Maybe. Although don't read the later books.
I don't think I know. I figured that.
Don't read no, but I mean, it's a lot of actual people, or a couple of people mixed in, and different things, and I mean, you know, as a writer, I mean, you can't just have a conversation. Right. Because it's going to end up somewhere. At some point, it's going to end up in a story somewhere.
So I've noticed when I've been with a number of psychics who say they are mediums that can talk to ghosts. And like, we'll go through a haunted place, and they'll say, "Oh, there's a person here, and he's doing this." And when I watch them, I think, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what my brain looks like when I'm writing a story." Mm-hmm. What do you think about those psychics that do that? I mean, like, because we're discussing here, like, on one hand, this stuff is real. It's like what you.
But it's weird because for me it's real. Right. But then I've never ever thought meeting anyone who said they were psychic or got these images. I've never believed any of them. Right. I watch the shows for the amusement of it, for the fun of it.
Right. We sit there and heckle it.
Yeah, like Ghost Hunters, and you go, and all that stuff, and I look at it and I go, good for them. They're making a ton of money. They've found their little thing to do, and I get that. That's great. like I've done the ghost tours in St. Augustine,
Yeah.
and the history of all of it
Oh, yeah.
is the fun part. But I don't really believe that you can look up and see a ghost hanging, and all that stuff. But so it's like, it's weird for me. I don't believe anybody else's stories, but then I believe my stories. I have my own story. Very rarely will I hear somebody give me a story or something like, okay, that's 100% believable.
Right.
Because it could all be in your head. You know what I mean? I mean,
exactly.
You don't
but
know.
To me, reality is everything is in your head. Yeah. You make up your real reality. So whatever you're experiencing is real to you. So, real quickly, tell us about your podcast.
I do. It's called Armcast, Dead Sexy Horror Podcast.
Okay.
And it comes out every Friday. And every Friday, I interview 2 different horror authors or filmmakers or musicians. Basically, anybody I want to know more about.
Right.
I interview.
Cool.
And I've had some big names on it in horror authors. I've been very lucky to know a lot of these people from going to conventions and stuff on a personal level. And like I'll go in May, I'll go to World Horror Convention again, and pretty much 4 or 5 of the people that will win Bram Stoker awards, I will do interviews with them that weekend, which is kind of neat. So
nice.
I just interview people that I like. I mean, there's been musicians and tons of filmmakers and actors, and then a lot of nonfiction people will write. I interviewed a woman who was a stripper, and she wrote basically her life, which wasn't just snorting cocaine and stuff like that. It was like, you know, the reality of being a stripper in LA and stuff like that. So it was like really neat. So that's pretty much it's fun.
Cool, very cool. Well, thank you very much, Armand.
Thank you. It was great meeting you.
It was nice to meet you too.
Finally, after all these years.
Right, exactly. I heard about you.
I heard a lot about you too. Yeah. I still came on.
Yeah, right. I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and remember, don't stop believing.